Hi there. Today I will talk about tuning and adjusting a fountain pen nib in 3 steps. Nearly every fountain pen I've bought has needed a bit of adjustment before it writes at its best, and I think that new fountain pen users, especially, are turned off when they spend the money on a new pen that ends up being scratchy or has poor ink flow. But virtually every pen can be adjusted to write as well as a fountain pen should. Alright, now I will tell you the 3 steps to tune your nib. I recommend doing this when the pen is inked up, so you can test how it writes with each adjustment. Just be prepared to get your fingers dirty. The first thing to do is to equally align the tines. Tines are the 2 prongs on either side of the middle slit in the nib. It will help if you have a magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe, but if not, eyeball it the best you can, and then slowly write with the pen left and right and left and right. Don't worry yet about the flow or overall smoothness. This is to make sure that first both tines are even. If one tine is too low, you'll feel it drag on the paper that one way, but not the other, so you can adjust it with your fingers. Use a small amount of pressure and bend the tines up or down, and keep going until it gets an even scratchiness or even smoothness left and right, until they have the same amount of feedback. It's better to do it in small increments until it's right than to bend it too much. The tines will be aligned, yes, when the left and right have equal amount of drag, and so if you can see them magnified, they will be evenly positioned. The second step is to adjust the slit width. Many pens come with the slit pinched. The tines are often too close together and not enough ink flows freely. The tines of a fountain pen should always be very close to each other but never actually touch each other. If you don't have a magnifying glass, hold the nib up to the light to see this. You'll be able to see a clear line in the the tines not actually touching. To spread the tines apart, you can work them back and forth and slowly pull them apart, or you can use a knife with a very thin blade to jam into the tines. I use this method, but it must be done carefully and slowly. The knife should enter at the back of the nib, or top of the nib, however you want to put it. This prevents scratching of the bottom of the tip of the nib that will contact the paper. So once again, make sure to do this slowly and in increments until you can see even light along the slit. If the slit is too wide, ink won't flow either. Then you can use your fingertips to work the tines back together and push them slowly back together. Now this step and the previous step might need to be done a few times, as each one can throw off the other's adjustment. So you might need to go back and do the first step again, or go back and do the second until you have both of them right, until the tines are equally aligned and the slit is optimal. Once the tines are aligned and the nib slit is perfect, you can go to the third and final step, which is smoothing and polishing. If your nib is writing perfectly now, you can skip this step, but often the iridium tip will need a bit of final polishing. I begin with the 2000 grit sandpaper and write in figure 8 patterns or around in opposite circles. Use light pressure and move the pen in different positions, holding it more upright, more downward, to each side, tilted, etc. This keeps the tip rounded and prevents it from developing flat spots. After this, if you have mylar paper or an even finer grit sandpaper, please move on to that. A brown paper bag actually works well too, and some people think that 2000 grit is far too coarse. I can feel the comments brewing, so feel free to find other videos and get a second opinion as to smoothing and polishing a nib. I simply say start with 2000 grit because it's the finest sandpaper found at my local hardware store, and I find that it works for me as a starting point. Periodically test out your pen and write with it on paper as you would normally. If properly aligned with optimum slit width and nicely smoothed, your pen should write as smooth as hot butter. Be extra careful with fine and extra fine nibs. Smoothing and adjusting them too much will make them smooth, but it might irreversibly turn your extra fine into a medium if you grind it down too much or have too much ink flow. So be even more incremental with each minor adjustment with finer nibs. So why don't all pens write like this in the first place? Fountain pens would ideally all write perfectly out of the box, but it's not cost effective to have someone hand check every single nib. And even then, everyone's grip, writing pressure, and style is totally different. So a pen that may be tuned to one person could write horribly for the next person. So with the exception of some premium brands that get hand smoothed, what you receive is the best nib that a factory can produce straight from the machine, which you might need to adjust for yourself after that. I'll emphasize again that adjusting a nib can ruin it if you're not careful. So easy does it, and try this method first on your cheaper nibs until you get comfortable with it. This is the method I use every time I purchase a pen. I've always needed to adjust it or smooth it. So I hope this helps you to enjoy your fountain pens and unlock their true smoothness and potential. Thank you.